Hi, I'm Wasaam Ismail. I'm the CEO of Loops. We are a creative-led integrated marketing agency with a head office right here in Colombo. And we have our offices also in Australia, Malaysia, Japan and Qatar. It is our job to offer creative and strategic integrated marketing communication solutions that span to all mediums. Apart from this, I'm also a lecturer for the Chartered Institute of Marketing for the subject digital marketing.
Hi, I'm Shalendra Mendis. I'm the Director of Digital for Group M Sri Lanka. Group M is Sri Lanka's biggest and most award-winning digital agency, and we are present in over 100 countries around the world. And in Sri Lanka, we've been present since 2006. This is the second home for me and my digital team. We live, breathe and sleep digital. It's a 24/7 job, but we all love what we do, and we believe that the best work happens when we love what we do.
From the Cubicle. How would you define digital marketing?
Actually, before you go in and try to define digital marketing, I think it's important to first understand the concept of marketing. So as marketers, what we basically try to do is we try to create, we try to communicate, and we try to deliver value to customers and other stakeholders in order to basically fulfill a particular business objective. So if you take that concept and if you apply it into any sort of online medium in order to deliver that customer experience, in long term obviously to drive profitability. So we regard that as digital marketing. So it's also about being at the right place at the right time with the right message to the right audience. And sometimes if you take the advertising industry, they have a different way of basically looking at it. Sometimes they even say that any action that drives an online conversation can also be looked at as digital marketing. So there are different ways of looking at it, but ultimately it's about giving that digital experience in all those online mediums in order to fulfill the purpose of marketing.
Okay, so adding on to what Wasaam said, I think apart from the defining digital marketing, it's one thing we need to remember now though is that there is no silo for digital anymore. There is no digital, there is no traditional, everything has converged. The thinking now should be about how we all we work in one coherent, one cohesive media landscape where there is no difference between what digital marketing is as opposed to any other type of marketing. Digital marketing is marketing now, and as marketers, it is essential. It should be a part of the mandatory skills you have to be able to navigate yourself in the digital environment. So I think if you even think of the question of defining digital marketing, you need to remember before everything else that digital is now marketing and nothing else.
How did you start your journey in digital marketing?
Actually, even before I started digital marketing, I was in the marketing communications field. I started off as a creative. That's the path I went on. I was a designer at one point. I started off as a junior writer. From there, I actually got into learning and understanding and getting myself qualified in marketing, and then handling brands in an agency side, and then eventually moving into the client side. At this point in time, I was basically working for a multinational telecommunications company, and at which point I kind of realized that where is all of this headed, where is marketing headed, and everything pointed towards digital because let's face it, at that time mobile was being big. So I realized if I want to really make a profession out of this field, I really need to understand what's going on and understand what's going to happen in the future. So this is what basically led me into digital marketing.
So for me it was not exactly a conscious decision, but I always knew intuitively inside me that this is what I was good at. Because for me, as soon as I graduated, I was about 21, 22 years old. What I initially wanted to do was start my own business. So for like 6 months to a year, I had all these ideas that I tried to make happen. And incidentally, all these ideas seemed to be in the digital space. So one of those ideas was an e-com related one, which I actually worked on for a while, and it almost came into fruition. I worked with a local big e-com player to try and launch this. It almost did, but for different reasons it did not take off, and my plans changed a bit. But so eventually I ended up going abroad because my family migrated as well. And when I went there, I realized all the jobs I'm applying for were in the digital industry, because all the skills I've garnered in my business attempts were in digital. So through that, I started working in a few digital related agencies in England. By the time I returned back to Sri Lanka, I knew digital is what I wanted to do. And I ended up getting offered a job by the same e-com company that I almost started a business with, and started working there. And then I was dealing a lot with a lot of local digital agencies, and Mindshare and GroupM were one of the biggest, and I ended up being offered a job there, and I've been there since, and that was the way I got into digital marketing.
What does it feel like to be in a position as a CEO, director at a young age?
This is actually a question that I've been asked a lot, actually. I would say it's quite challenging, because when you're at a young age and you have such a huge responsibility, and you have to go out in the world and face like people who are very experienced in their fields, and tell them sometimes that, you know, we try to give a particular perspective of expertise and try to convince them in terms of delivering a good solution. The challenges you would face, of course, is, you know, people always question saying, does he know what he is doing? How much of experience does he have? I mean, isn't he too young to do what he's doing? But at the same time, I suppose the work kind of speaks for itself, and in all of those interactions, I mean, when they start seeing the kind of value add and the expertise that you can bring in, I think that speaks for itself. But at the same time, there are its positives as well, because, you know, when you're young and you have such a huge responsibility, you also I mean, I think I have the ability to kind of also bring in that new age thinking, and not always think in an old or traditional mindset. And also the ability to kind of connect with a lot of young people who are coming into this field at an alarming rate. So yeah, it has its ups and downs, I would say.
For me, first and foremost, I'm grateful to be in this position and to get to do what I get to do, to have this team behind me and this agency to work for. But at the same time, it's a big responsibility. There's a lot riding on my shoulders. It's a 24/7, 365 kind of job. There's always things we need to look into. There's so many opportunities everywhere, so many issues, so many campaigns, so many things to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And it does take a toll in terms of stress, etc. You could see from all the grades I have. But all in all, it's something that I'm very, very proud about, to be where I am at this age. And as long as I love what I do and keep at it and keep getting better every day, I know I'll do justice to the role and keep improving.
From the Cubicle. To what do you attribute your success?
I think it's the fact that you know that you don't know it all. See, the thing is, especially if you're in marketing or in digital marketing with this field, sometimes what you know today doesn't really, you know, help you sometimes in the future, because things just keep evolving in a rapid pace. And if you're going to be in this field, I think there's a lot of time you need to allocate for continuous learning. There's a lot of reading that you need to do. There's a lot of case studies you need to look into. There's a lot of experimenting that you need to do, even with the brands that sometimes you handle. And the fact that, you know, I think I've understood the fact that I need to keep learning, right, is one of the things I think where I feel like I am successful in. And this is also something, even as an agency culture, something we drive to almost all of our employees. We always tell them, listen, spend time learning new things, because the moment you think that you have nothing left to learn, that's where things are just going to get constant and going to go down for you.
So for me, I think the very simple reason is that I love what I do, and it's been that way since day one. It does not always feel like work. The time I put into it, the creativity I put into it, the ways in which I look at it, the new ways that I try to learn, everything just stems from the fact that I love what I do. So whenever certain factors come in, you know, the factors that come in with running an organization, I try to, you know, still focus on the path that I love, and that fuels you. And that is an advice I give my teams all the time as well, to make sure you love what you do, and put in your heart and soul into what you do as well. Because if you don't, you're not doing justice, not just to yourself, but to the job, as well as your legacy in terms of what you do in your career. So simple answer is to love what you do. And I was lucky enough to work in a field that I love.
What do you enjoy the most about being an expert in digital marketing?
I think even before going there, I think one thing I enjoy the most when it comes to my work is actually being with an amazing team, and you know, working with an amazing team that, you know, comes together and brings ideas to life, and then putting it across those mediums, I think is very enjoying to see, and it kind of makes an impact towards a larger people, right? And that also generates results for customers, and that's great, that's amazing. And also having the opportunity to be able to not just, you know, work with one industry. In this field, you get to work with a lot of industries. Sometimes one day you're thinking about, okay, how do I deliver results for a bank? The next day you're like, what do I do for FMCG? And on another day you're like, okay, how do I bring this together for apparel? And that experience is amazing, because you don't get bored with just one industry. On a day-to-day basis, you keep thinking of multiple industries, and putting all those things together, I think it's I really enjoy what I do.
So I partly answered this in an earlier question, but there are certain factors that make digital a very disruptive force. There are certain advantages that digital offers that most other mediums can't, and that's why you see the disruption happening from the companies like Google, Facebook, Uber, etc. is all based on the advantages digital has to offer. The scope for agility and innovation is way higher. The features and powers it has in terms of targeting people, in terms of delivering results, measurability, etc. are humongous. The people who put in more work, think more creatively, try to love what they do and have a proper team behind them are the ones who usually succeed. So the dynamism of this industry, coupled with all these advantages and how enjoyable it can be across industries, is what attracts me the most. And also I think the fact that everything is converging towards digital, the scope for it will just keep getting bigger year on year. And wherever you go, whether it's in Sri Lanka or some other country across the world, what you learn here on digital is always going to be relevant. And whether you do your own business, work for someone else, work for a client, digital is always relevant. So the scope of it is also a big part of the attraction for me.
What was the most important part of your whole journey?
I think in several points being extremely lucky, and when I say lucky, I mean like coming across, you know, good people who've like inspired me, and also being able to look at me and identify a potential and push me towards, you know, places where I never imagined that I could go myself, and that I think has been a very crucial point in my life, being really lucky. And also I think taking that learning, what I also try to do is I try to inspire people, whether it's within my team or whether it's people outside my organization who's maybe in the same industry. I look at things like, as you know, I'm a lecturer for CIM as well, and I try to see how I can give back my learning into society there. So I think that's a very important part.
So for me, I was just thinking about this question now, and it's a bit of an unconventional answer even to myself. But I think the formative years for me was when I was abroad, and I mentioned earlier that I was working 2 jobs. One was at a YouTube advertising agency that was part-time, one at a supermarket, and then also I did a lot of experimentation on the side. So while there, I learned through that YouTube advertising agency, all my ABCs of digital marketing started kicking in. But I think I learned even more from that supermarket job, where I learned to work hard. Like, it was almost like manual labor. It was a lot of physical work, late nights, sometimes 24-hour shifts. But it really made me see how much I can push myself to work hard physically. So nowadays, when I have long nights at office or have continuous work weeks, I just think back to those times. And for me, all this work I do now is like heaven compared to the physical labor that you have to go in that sort of a job. So while I was there, I was working in that agency, working in the supermarket, as well as doing my experimentation work on the side. I think those 3 combined together gave me a lot of skills, because when I started working in Sri Lanka again, I realized all of them started kicking in. So I think it carries me to this day, and that was the most important part of my journey.
From the Cubicle. What do you know of each other as a digital marketer?
Actually, I think I first learnt of Shalendra maybe a year or 2 ago. I think I'm not too sure, because I think it started when we as an agency, we actually we were recognizing a few of the campaigns in Sri Lanka which we thought that was good, and I think one of the campaigns Shalendra was involved in was actually recognized by our agency as well as one of the good campaigns that was implemented. And we put out a blog article about it, and at that point Shalendra had reached out to me to just inquire a few things, and that's when I actually had my first interaction with you, I think.
Yeah, it was.
And that's when I realized, oh, Shalendra is from Group M and he's into digital. But beyond that, we've met each other quite a few times. We've bumped into the same meetings with the same client. We've
Quite
judged
often.
competitions together. So yeah, and I know he's somebody who's been in the industry for a while as a digital marketer.
So incidentally, we went to the same school, but
Yeah.
we never really interacted in school, or I don't remember anything of Wasaam from school. But as Wasaam said, our initial reaction was online after a particular blog article was published, and then we keep bumping it to each other even today. It's quite random. So many, especially client meetings. We are competitors in the industry. So
We also work together.
we have worked together, competitors
Yeah.
at times, but we keep bumping into each other at the most random places. So yeah.
What advice would you tell the other?
So to begin with, I'd be like, man, your beard's looking great. If I were you, I think I'd keep it. You know, it's, that's because that's not something I've tried. That's not something that I could do. But on more serious note, what I would say is, listen, we're in the same field. Yes, we are in 2 different agencies, but at the end of the day, there is, of course, one objective where we want to see our own organizations grow. But at the same time, I think something that we can also do is work together for a larger purpose, right? For example, I mean, I would still say that yes, we've as a country, Sri Lanka is progressing well in terms of digital, but there's so much more that can be done. So when agencies like us, when we work together, sometimes we can take the industry to another level for also the generations to come, including ours. So work with us and work with other people.
Yeah. So I completely agree with what you said. And that's where we should take our clients, our industry and Sri Lanka together. And there's a lot of rivalry as well. There are a lot of things that happen and sometimes we forget that. So apart from that, I would say this is advice I'm sure he knows just as well as I do. But I think people like us, especially when we're going up the ladder, we need to keep in mind why we started in the first place and the fact that we love what we do. And no matter however the revenue pressures, whatever other stakeholder pressure comes in our way, it's very important to make sure that we still love what we do. As fundamental as that is, it goes a long way. And I think if I were to share or remind of some sort of advice, that would be it.
What's the first impression you had of each other?
Damn. I think at first when you reached out to me, probably online, because it wasn't really a conversation, it wasn't a face-to-face conversation. Probably would have been like, who is this guy, right? But when we actually met, I kind of realized he's a nice guy who's one of the top guys in the field. And I think that there's a mutual respect in that sense. Yeah.
So for me, there was no real first impression because we didn't really have first interaction. It was like half and half.
Absolutely.
Initially it was online, and then we met at other certain events, and it was just passing by conversations. But I think overall, it's been I think we are yet to have that first impression. We never had like 2-3 hours in the same place probably before. But yeah, I would say it's still a very vague first impression.
So that's probably something that we need to remedy then.
Yes, probably.
What do you think about this program?
Well, it's a good program. Well, I think it's an interesting concept to pit competitors, together in the same forum, because what you usually see is, you have somebody known in a particular industry who gives a particular point of view. But I think this kind of captures the same question kind of captures different points of views. So you're not a viewer is not subjugated to just one point of view, which is a good thing, which comes out in the program, I would say. Yeah.
So completely agreed on that. Although it's a new concept and I wasn't very aware of it before, it's a concept where industries can benefit, where people like us come together and maybe work together more, can push an industry forward. It could also push the country forward, and I can see so many ways in which this can expand and become bigger as a program as well. So it's a concept worth exploring, and I hope.
And also, just to interrupt you there, Shalendra, I'm sure like if they want to take it to the next level, they could speak to one of us, right? Yeah. It was just a joke.
So yeah, I think it's a good foundation to really expand. It's a concept that has a good